In this first video, we're going to take a look at a user who has a profile, so a single relationship. So let's go over to our DynamoDB workbench. I'm going to be using this program just to basically visualize what I'm talking about. And then later on, we'll actually go in and work with a real DynamoDB database. For now, let me just quickly add a table. And so you're going to do something similar in the Dynamo dashboard. And when you set up a table, you need to set up keys. And so there's two things when you think about a DynamoDB item or items in your database. Because it's NoSQL, it doesn't matter what the structure is. It could be whatever. The only thing that does matter are the keys. And the reason why is because the keys are basically the ways in which you get at your data. So however you have your key set up, just think of it as like paths into your database that allow you to find your data in a certain way. And so, for example, for a single item, you may want multiple paths at that thing. And that's going to become a lot more clear as we continue on. But one way to do it, let's just pretend that we have a table of books. You could say, well, if every book has an ID, that's going to be my way at finding each item. And so that would be a key. So you could do book ID. And that would work out. But we are actually going to be storing multiple kinds of things in a single database, in a single table. So we're going to be storing users and profiles and tasks and teams. And so if I was to call this user ID, that would only be accurate for a user, and it wouldn't be accurate for a task. So what I like to do is actually just name these things kind of generic, since multiple different kinds of items are going to be used. So I'm just going to call this PK to stand for partition key. And we're also going to add a sort key, and we'll see why that's important as we continue on. So these two things are going to determine our pathway into our database. And then other attributes is just whatever you want it to be. In this case, I'm just going to call it data for now, just for demonstration. So let's add that. And now if we go into our visualizer here and we go to update our table, we're going to add some data. So I'm going to say, so this is me just manually adding data just so that we can see how this might work. So you could imagine that we have a user who has an ID like this. And we're going to make a profile, and just imagine that there's a bunch of JSON data here. I'm not going to actually write it out. We're just going to save that just for demonstration. I'm going to add another one. User1235 profile and JSON object. Okay, save. So now we got two different objects in our database. And there's so many different ways you could structure your data. But what we are doing in this scenario is we're going to say that this line here, this data represents a profile. And so the SK is going to tell us what kind of thing, what kind of object this is. This isn't to say that SKs always do that. That's just to say that this is how we're using it in this scenario. So we're going to say that this is a profile. And this profile object belongs to this user. And then you can see that in the next line, this is another JSON object, which is a profile, but this profile belongs to a second user. Okay, let's see how we would do this in an actual DynamoDB table. So what I've done is I've set up a test database, and it's got the PK and SK, so that is great. And what I'm going to do is, what I've done is set up a Node.js project, and I've just added .env and the AWS SDK. You can imagine that this is maybe what you would be using in your actual backend application. So I have my AWS credentials in my .env file. And if we go into our make file here, this is just a demonstration of how you might add something to a DynamoDB table. So I'm getting my environment variable, setting up the AWS SDK. I'm setting up Dynamo with my region and my credentials. And then in here, I'm doing a dynamo.put with these parameters. In this case, I'm giving a table name, and I'm specifying what this is going to look like. And you can see that I got the PK, which is user1234, and the SK, which is profile. If I don't include those two things, it's going to error out and say you need to fill those things out, because the PK and SK, that is the path. And we need a pathway into this data because that's the way we set up the database. So let's go ahead and run that command. So let's do node make. And now if we check this out, wonderful, we have this data right here. We got a name and address, but then the PK and SK, this is our pathway in to that. And so just to demonstrate how we might actually get that data, if we go to our get function here, everything's the same, except now I'm doing a dynamodb.get. And in order to get at that item, I need to specify the path, and the path is the PK and SK. And so in this case, I'm saying, give me the item, the profile item that belongs to the user 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's just go ahead and check that out. I'm going to do node get, and there we go. That is how we query and get at that piece of data.